Asclepius, son of Apollo, the Greek god of medicine, and Chaldea's mad doctor. By looking into his class, design, skill set, backstory, and characterization, how well does the Asclepius of Fate Grand Order compare to his mythical counterpart? And what grade would I give his depiction? Let's get into it. Asclepius is a caster class servant, which is a good choice for him. Asclepius was a son of the Greek god Apollo, the god of archery, oracles, the sun, the arts, a ton of things really, it's kinda ridiculous. But the part that matters to us is that Apollo was also a god of healing, something that Asclepius became exceptionally good at. It's why we know his name after all. And since healer or science types have already made it into the caster class with people like Medea Lily, Paracelsus, or Edison, it makes sense that we get Asclepius as a caster. Getting into his character design, Asclepius doesn't look very Greek, unless you are going with Fate's version of ancient Greece that has the gods be giant robots and such. With that said, there is something pretty cool about his design. At first glance, his first ascension seems weird. Like, what even is this outfit supposed to be? But that's only if you are looking at it head-on like this. If you look at this ascension in profile, from a side view, you notice that his mask is a beak. Is he a bird? No, but do you know what this reminds me of? Plague doctors. The outfits worn by medical personnel during the medieval and early modern period in Europe. These guys were less doctors and more people who showed up to keep track of plague victims. There wasn't much they could do with the medical knowledge of the time. As for the beak thing, these plague doctors would put nice-smelling things like herbs, spices, or lavender in them, to have something pleasant to counter the horrific odors that they would encounter. Seriously, I'm glad I don't live in those times. With my senses being as sensitive as they are, I probably would have lost my mind, even more than I have already. For his second ascension, Asclepius takes on a more modern look. Obviously, the color scheme is different, being much fancier, but this outfit looks similar to what a surgeon would wear. For his third and final ascension, he gets rid of the mask and the color of his clothes change from black to white. A hint towards his divinity, perhaps? He still has a futuristic look though, making me think that he's some oracle or prophet in a sci-fi or something. One nitpick is that Asclepius is clean-shaven, whereas the mythical Asclepius is almost always depicted having a rather impressive beard. In any case, his design clearly links to medical professionals from various time periods, which makes sense considering what Asclepius is all about. As for the weapon he has, the staff with that mechanical snake thing, that's his Bond CE, so I'm going to hold off for the moment. But for now, I'll just say that it's pretty much a dead giveaway to his identity. Overall, Asclepius has a design that at first might seem really out there, but in truth actually gives strong hints as to who he is and what he is about. This is creative license done right. I approve. Moving into a skill set, Asclepius' first skill is God of Medicine, which, well, this is pretty obvious, isn't it? Asclepius is the Greek god of medicine after all. And yes, he has divinity rank A as a passive. Now, Asclepius was not born a god, he was made one after his death. Originally, he was the child of a human woman and, well, let's hold off for a second. Asclepius' second skill is Child of Apollo. Okay, that was slightly longer than a second, but you didn't have to wait that long. Anyway, Asclepius' father was Apollo, though, well, he wasn't exactly a good dad. As is common with Greek mythology, there are many different versions of the story, but the one we will be following? Apollo shacked up with a human woman named Coronis, princess of Trica, a city in Thessaly. But one day, Apollo either saw or heard about Coronis having an affair with a human named Ischius, and Apollo got rather pissed off about this. He killed Ischius himself, and either also killed Coronis, his sister Artemis killed her for him, or something along those lines. Anyway, as Coronis was being put upon the funeral pyre, it was discovered that she was pregnant with Apollo's kid, and so he decided to swoop in and rescue the infant before mother and infant were both set ablaze. Apollo decided to name his new son Asclepius, and then either briefly took care of him, or immediately shipped him off to someone else. I'll pick this back up in the backstory section. Lastly, Asclepius' third skill is Serpent Charmer, referring to a story involving Asclepius where he had an encounter with a snake. Asclepius was in Crete to try to heal Glaucus, the son of King Minos, and they decided to throw him in jail until he could figure out how to do so. That seems like a bit much, especially once you find out that Glaucus, he wasn't ill, he was dead. The king was asking Asclepius to resurrect the dead, a tad unreasonable. Anyway, while stuck in jail, a snake snuck into where Asclepius was, and he promptly whacked it with his staff, killing the snake. But soon after, another snake came into the cell with an herb, placed it upon the dead snake, and poof, the snake was alive again. Upon seeing this, Asclepius found the same type of herb and used it to bring Glaucus back to life. Neat. But Asclepius soon pursued this further, trying to discover how to reliably bring the dead back to life. Which brings us to... Asclepius' noble phantasm is resurrection-fraught Hades, whereupon a geyser of blood shoots up, he shapes it into a sphere, and then assists his allies. This is the crown jewel of Asclepius' talent at medicine, the ability to resurrect the dead. The how of it varies depending upon the version, but the one that Fate is using, all that blood you see in the MP animation, do you know whose blood that is? Medusa, the youngest of the Gorgon sisters, the original writer of the Fate franchise, and someone who I'm very patiently waiting to do a video on. I'm stuck until Ordeal Call 1 Paper Moon gets released on NA. Anyway, Medusa got murderized by Perseus, but Athena decided to give Asclepius some of Medusa's blood, and he discovered that while blood from the left side of her body was extremely dangerous, the blood from the right side of her body could be used to help raise the dead. Now, Asclepius being able to raise the dead ended up being a problem for Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, and Hades asked Zeus to kill Asclepius, because, you know, him being able to rescue the dead was taking souls from Hades. In other words, taking power from him. Seriously, is there any Greek god who isn't a self-absorbed prick? I'll talk more about this in the backstory section, but for our purposes, the MP Asclepius uses in FGO isn't actually able to resurrect the dead. He doesn't have Medusa's blood anymore, and I don't expect that she is inclined to give him more. It probably would be fatal to even ask. So the MP Asclepius has isn't as good as what he was able to do in the Legends, but it's still very good at healing his allies, and, under the right conditions, can actually revive the dead despite these shortcomings. We get 2 entries for this MP in Asclepius' profile, one for this version, and another for the better version that he doesn't get to use. Obviously, this is a fantastic MP choice for Asclepius, since it's one of, if not the most famous things he did in Greek mythology. Asclepius' craft essence is Asclepius, featuring his staff, the Rod of Asclepius. I've already talked about that story with the snakes, and with that in mind, it shouldn't surprise you that Asclepius both came to value snakes and became associated with them. It's quite common to find depictions of Asclepius together with his rod and a snake wrapped around it. Indeed, at the temples dedicated to Asclepius as a god of healing, the Asclepions, they would keep snakes there, holding them in high regard. This image of the rod and snake wrapped around it, the Rod of Asclepius, is a symbol associated with medicine to the present day, featuring on the flag of the World Health Organization, as well as on the Star of Life, the symbol of emergency medical services, the people in ambulances and such. On a side note, the caducus, the symbol of 2 snakes wrapped around a rod that sprouts wings at the top, that is linked to Hermes, the Greek messenger god, and is actually more a symbol of commerce and trade, though it does also see use by medical personnel, such as the flag of the United States Surgeon General, the top spokesman on matters of public health in the US. Anyway, the Rod of Asclepius is a fantastic CE choice. Asclepius' Valentines CE is medicinal chocolate, featuring various chocolates, but in the form of pills, powders, vaccines, and so forth. I think you get the point by now. Asclepius is the medicine guy, and he will administer medicine to you even on Valentine's Day. And, as said in the CE's text, if you skip a dose or try to give this stuff to someone else, he will call you an idiotic patient. Which, some of you might be okay with that, but, well, it would make me feel bad. Now for characterization, starting with a look into the legends surrounding Asclepius. Since I already talked about the circumstances of his birth when getting into his second skill, I'm going to pick up from there. Asclepius was rescued by Apollo, though Apollo killed his mother, so he's the reason the infant Asclepius needed rescuing in the first place. Depending upon the story, Apollo either shipped the infant off right away to a caretaker, or he acted like a father for a little while first. Who did Apollo give Asclepius to? Greek mythology's most famed teacher, of course, Chiron. Knowing that Apollo was, among other things, a god of healing, Chiron decided to instruct the young Asclepius in healing as well. This turned out to be an excellent choice, since Asclepius not only took to these lessons well, he soon surpassed his teacher in skill, becoming a master of healing and medicine with no equal. Asclepius continued to hone his skills, though he would also get involved in a few things outside of medicine. Like pretty much everyone else from this time in Greek mythology, Asclepius would join both the Argo and the hunt for the Caledonian boar, though I can't find any details of what he did during either of these adventures aside from being the doctor. He would also get married to a woman named Ipione, and with her have 3 sons and 5 daughters. A few of these children would get up to their own adventures later on. The sons Macaon and Podalirius would lead forces on the side of the Greeks in the Trojan War. As for the daughters, all 5 of them would become goddesses of different aspects of healing, though 2 of them stand out: Panacea, whose name today means a remedy that can cure anything, and Hegeia, whose name would give us the English word hygiene. But Asclepius was most famous for pushing the boundaries of medical knowledge, eventually learning how to bring the dead back to life. This he would do on several occasions, such as with Glaucus, the son of King Minos of Crete, Hippolytus, the son of Theseus, Tyndareus, king of Sparta and father to both Castor and Clytemnestra, and a few others. But as I mentioned when talking about his MP, Asclepius being able to revive the dead ended up attracting the attention of Hades, who then asks Zeus to kill Asclepius for the crime of weakening his power. And so Zeus threw a thunderbolt at Asclepius, killing him. I would like to point out that since Apollo is Asclepius' father, and Zeus is Apollo's father, that means Zeus killed his grandson. It's not the worst thing the guy's done, but just further evidence on the long list of reasons why Zeus is a dick. Apollo, despite being an absent father who killed Asclepius' mother, did not take the murder of his son by his father well. He actually went and killed Arges, one of the 3 Cyclopes, the smiths who forged Zeus's thunderbolts. Zeus did punish Apollo for this, but later accepted his request to elevate Asclepius to the stars, making him the god of medicine. The god Asclepius would become a revered deity not only for the ancient Greeks, but later the Romans too. Hundreds of temples dedicated to Asclepius became places not only for people to pay tribute to the god of medicine, but also to seek cures for what diseases afflicted them. These Asclepions, or healing temples, would in turn become places of learning for those who sought to become skilled at medicine. Probably the most famous person said to have been a student at one of these temples was Hippocrates, the father of medicine, and the namesake of the Hippocratic Oath, the code of ethics that doctors and physicians continue to swear to this very day. Though people might not go to temples dedicated to Asclepius anymore, the ones that exist are little more than ruins today, his legacy nevertheless stays with us, like how the rod of Asclepius remains a symbol of medical organizations throughout the world. Now, if that backstory section seemed way shorter than usual, it's because it was, about half of what it usually is. But the reason for that is because much of what I would have put in this backstory section ended up getting brought up before that, in Asclepius' skills, MP, and Bond CE. After all that, there wasn't too much left for me to talk about. So how does his characterization hold up? We first meet Asclepius in Lostbelt 4, Yugakshetra, where he is serving as one of the Lokapala serving Arjuna altar, together with Neja and William Tell. God Arjuna has given Asclepius the power of Yama, the Hindu god of death, and he uses that to raise an army of undead when it's time to fight Chaldea. At least until Daebit suddenly shows up with a servant and re-kills all of them. Gee, I wonder who that servant is. We're gonna find out real soon, I expect. Anyway, after losing that fight, Asclepius asks for another god's power and receives it, this time Varuna, the Hindu god of water, oceans, but also patron of physicians, which naturally suits Asclepius quite well. Unfortunately, trying to hold on to 2 deities at once ends up overwhelming him, and Asclepius ends up losing to Chaldea again because of it, this time vanishing from the Lostbelt, at least for a bit. His personality in Lostbelt 4 is a bit twisted though, not quite to the same extent as Tristan in Camelot, but Asclepius, like the other servants of Arjuna altar, has been messed with by Ashia Dolman, losing the memories of why exactly he decided to pursue medicine in the first place. Because of that, He ends up pursuing medical knowledge for its own sake, even if that means letting a plague run rampant in a town and kill many of its inhabitants. He actually gets pissed off when he discovers that a mystery benefactor arrives to cure everyone, since Asclepius was basically using the town's inhabitants as lab rats. While the Asclepius that gets summoned to Chaldea is better, being less of a mad scientist who seeks knowledge at all costs, his attitude is still one from an earlier time, when the doctor's word was law and patients should just shut up and do what they say. Since we didn't really get laws about informed consent until after some very unethical medical experiments in the mid-20th century, this portrayal of Asclepius makes sense to me. He comes from an earlier era of medical practice, and so he has a different attitude. As for the Chaldean Asclepius, he's had many appearances since Lostbelt 4, notably Summer 7 when he gets a summer costume, keeps a close eye on his old nemesis Ashia Dolmen, and helps punish him when it is shown, once again, that Dolmen has caused trouble for everyone. Also, I'd actually forgotten this until working on this video, but Asclepius actually fought Dolmen at the end of Lostbelt 4, having used his MP to resurrect himself, and now, cured of Dolmen's meddling, Asclepius decided to fight Dolmen while Chaldea was facing off against Peperoncino at the Tree of Emptiness. But the appearance I wish to give particular attention to is Asclepius' Interlude, one of the biggest interludes we get. It took me almost 40 minutes to go through the dialogue. Asclepius, being a god of medicine, is set to take over the infirmary in Chaldea, but first goes on a journey of sorts, meeting some servants that he knew in life, others who also have an interest in medicine, and learning about his predecessor, Dr. Roman. This interlude is some fantastic character development for Asclepius, since the interactions are varied and give you a good look into his history and personality. Early on, he runs into a group of servants, Paris, Artemis, and Orion. He gets along okay with Artemis, who is not only his aunt, but also one of the people Asclepius raised from the dead, Hippolytus, the son of Theseus, was done on her behalf. But when it comes to Paris, and especially the sheep plushie he is carrying, which is a terminal for Apollo, Asclepius' father, well, he chucks that plushie into a garbage bin. While it did come up in Lostbelt 4, it's made clear here that Asclepius hates gods, especially Greek ones, with a special hatred for Apollo, Zeus, and Hades, his father who killed his mother, his grandfather who killed him, and his great-uncle who asked Zeus to kill him, respectively. While Asclepius hating Zeus and Hades makes sense, Asclepius hating Apollo, well, I mean that also makes sense. Apollo did kill his mother, but Apollo also tried to avenge Asclepius' death, killing one of Zeus's thunderbolt makers, being punished for it, but then convinced Zeus to make Asclepius a god of medicine. I would at least like to see what Asclepius thinks about that, but we don't get it. After his encounter with these servants, Asclepius also meets up with Jason and Atalanta, fellow voyagers on the Argo. Predictably, Jason tries to get Asclepius to serve him again, only to get shut down, then put into a chokehold by Atalanta, a scuffle in the cafeteria that attracts Florence Nightingale, one of the people Asclepius was hoping to meet in order to learn more about Chaldea's medical staff. Oh, and he also says hi to Chiron, his old teacher. While his encounters meeting people he used to know are fun, it is his seeking out medical records from Sanson, Nightingale, and Da Vinci that is the main focus, since it means Asclepius learns more about Dr. Roman and how he handled his medical duties. Asclepius ultimately concludes that while he and Dr. Roman are very different people, with very different approaches to their work, Asclepius looking through the past records gives him an appreciation and respect for Dr. Roman. This also gives us a chance to see Asclepius as more than just a doctor with a bit of a mad scientist vibe. He is someone who is genuinely trying to advance medicine for the good of humanity. It's a humanizing moment for the character that made me appreciate him much more, having him recognize Dr. Roman's efforts as admirable, and promising to continue where he left off. And now for the verdict. What grade would I give Asclepius' depiction in Fate Grand Order? Well, his character design, skill set, MP, and craft essences are excellent. Everything links to his character quite nicely. His skill set stands out for not only having all those lore connections, but also by making Asclepius a phenomenal healing and support character, which is exactly what he ought to be. As for characterization, it too is quite good, even if his first appearance made him seem seriously unethical. His appearances since then, in his own interlude, in Summer 7, and various other events have made up for that, giving us a character who is devoted to his work, a bit scary at times, but also giving us time to see Asclepius the person, rather than just Asclepius the doctor. The only real nitpick I have is how his relationship with Apollo is treated. It seems like pure hatred from Asclepius, but I think it really ought to be more complicated than that. Perhaps that could be something to explore in a future interlude. If we get that, then I'll have to come back to Asclepius and bump up his grade accordingly. Not by much though, because aside from that, his portrayal in Fate Grand Order is pretty damn good. And so for a final grade, I'm going to give Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine, an A. If you would like to learn more about the guy who made Asclepius engage in questionable behavior in Lostbelt 4, and who Asclepius got revenge against both in Lostbelt 4 and in Summer 7, check out my video on Ashiadoman here. Also please like, subscribe, and come check out the streams during the weekend sometime, starting at noon Pacific. Until next time.